And now, it's time for TJwow.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you are, or if you're listening to the playback of this. We're really glad to see you here today. And this is me. I am your host. I'm the deputy editor of Training Journal, and I'm the person that gets to have all of these fabulous conversations with everybody today. Now, the way that we approach our webinars, well, it's all about conversation. Whenever we go to a conference or an event, I don't know about you, but I always think that the best part is the time we have a chat over coffee, or maybe it's in the pub afterwards. Let's say it's the pub. I think it's probably that. And that's what I wanted today to be all about. And all of our webinars are all about having just a conversation. So we do have that chat window. You're using it really well. Thank you very much for that. You can use that anytime to make comments, questions for each other, just kind of see what's going on. Also, what we've got is a question and answer pod. So you don't get these in all webinars, but we know that our webinars can get quite busy. So we wanted to make sure that you had the option to put your question in the Q&A pod. And that way, you'll make sure that you can absolutely get your question answered, and we'll see it. You won't see all the questions that are listed in there, but I will do, so that's absolutely fine. And we'll make sure we get to those. Now, if you're thinking, oh, I've got a microphone, I wouldn't mind giving that a go. You can raise your hand and let me know that you'd like to say something or answer something. So that's all good. And also, you can join us on Twitter. So there's a growing army of people using the hash TJwow hashtag on Twitter, so please join us there. Blake's typed in the chat window, good morning all. I'm paying homage to the silent movies by not having any audio or sound. Even Joe is puzzled. I certainly am. I tell you what, we've been trying for about 45 minutes to get that working, which is really awful. So you know the sessions are being recorded. We've got loads of back webinars that you can go and have a look at another day. So I think it's about time that we got started. And we have three amazing speakers today, although sadly Blake might be more of a participant in the chat window today. Lots of people making that joke about turning it off and on again. All right, maybe we should try that. I've never thought of it before. So let's go and move into the main section where we're going to bring in everybody on video. So Blake is there. Blake can kind of give us a wave. But other than that, sadly, he can't kind of hear and he can't speak. And we can't hear him. However, we do have Ainsley and we have Perry. So let's just do a couple of introductions and see what we can learn about our speakers today. So Ainsley, I'm going to come to you first, then to Perry. So Ainsley, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and whereabouts in the world you are.
Oh, yes. I'm based in London, working for an organisation called Achieve Forum. We're a consultancy specialising in leadership development and helping organisations to drive change. And we do a lot of research around the workers and the leaders of the future. So looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And Perry, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello there, yeah. So I'm in Northamptonshire right now. So I'm in the, not in the Home Office as in the governmental department, but I'm in the office at home. And I often sort of joke to people that I'm a bit obsessive and live in the future because that's what really fascinates me. But that's also the work I help companies do as an independent practitioner. I help them create a better future for their work, their employees, their learning, their opportunities and possibilities. So yeah, I am very much a time traveller.
Oh, I love that, a time traveller. I've got a flux capacitor in my car, by the way, but that's a whole other story. Okay, so we also do have Blake. He's still trying to work some stuff out. And Jeff from the Netherlands has given us a really good suggestion as well. Thank you, Jeff. So hopefully Blake will be back with us a little bit later on, and I've shared his details with you there. Just in case you want to go and have a look at those, as with all of our speakers. So our question today is all around the worker of the future, the skills that those people need, which actually includes us as L&D professionals. So let's get a little bit of an insight, I guess, first of all from Ainsley, then from Perry, about, well, what do you think those are? So Ainsley, what are your headline thoughts about the worker of the future and the skills they might need?
Sure. The headline thoughts that I have, and this is kind of based on what we've heard from our clients over the past year, 18 months, the kind of three key themes that we're hearing, the the work needs to be collaborative. Now, that means working across enterprises, working across departments, locations and culture, being able to do so. Second part is to be customer driven. So not just to the customers on the street coming into your store, but also your internal customers, being able to consult, challenge and provide solutions appropriately. And then kind of the last part that kind of comes to mind is being agile, which encompasses the change agenda. So how people from individual contributors to people on the factory floor through to senior leaders be agile enough when change happens. How can they adapt and galvanize their team and be an important part of that. So those are the kind of three things that come to mind from my point of view.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, especially kind of the agility to be able to kind of do something positive rather than just reacting and firefighting all the time. So that's a big problem, isn't it? Thank you, Ainsley. And Perry, what are your thoughts about the skills for the worker of the future?
Yeah, so I think I'll start by saying I think there's almost like one overarching frame in the future, which is that people have got to be good at paradox management. And so what I mean by that is being able to manage old and new, being able to manage systems and people, and being able to understand psychological and emotional, because I think there's something about the state that we're in where we have got old and new coexisting and the challenges that we're facing, that agility that Ainsley just talked about. You do require new thinking, but equally that could be quite scary and unnerving, so you need to rely on something you've learned to help you learn your way through that in the future. So paradox management, I'd say, is the only way I could describe it in this sort of succinct little title.
I really think that's interesting. It's that dichotomy of what was before and is going to be the future. So yeah, paradox management, whilst it sounds kind of funny initially, actually that's really important. So, you know, everybody, we've got that chat window. You can raise your hand, you can tell us what you think, you can use the Q&A pod. Daryl, if you wanted to say something, do let me know. I know your microphone's working. Virginie, we can always try that with you. We do have Blake back again, and he can hear us now, which is absolutely great. I don't know that he can actually speak yet, but we've improved one step, it must be said. Now, we've got a question come in on the Q&A pod. Thank you, Christina. Christina says, can we really see into the future or plan for it? Things change so quickly. So let me come to Perry first on that, then Ainsley. Perry, can we really see into the future?
I'll sort of default to a good friend of mine who's a futurologist and a trend spotter to give you an answer on this one. I think the short answer is no, of course we can't predict. It's very difficult to do that, but we can start to see trends, and we can start to create a little bit more of an energy towards a future that we create rather than it just happens. And the way we do that is essentially 4 frames. We can use data and information so that we can map past activities through a data sort of lens, and that can help us map then into the future. We can even look to the past and think, well, what worked before is possibly likely to come back, but a slightly twisted version of it. But we can look around us as well. If you think, what does the future look like? If you went to some cities in the world, they are so connected and enabled, and you know, they've got all sorts of different transportation regimes and so on. They look like the future compared to where you might have come from. So there are people that are more pioneering, that are more experimental, that are more adventurous, that are creating some clues to what the future looks like. So no, we can't predict it precisely, but I think we can start to feel it and sense it and understand it more when we can apply some data, some scenarios, and look back a bit.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, Perry. Building on top of that, obviously we can't predict the future. Anyone that says that is a liar. But I think we can only look to the past, where you have to adapt to what changes are put in front of you. You can use an organizational example, you know, such as Kodak and Blockbuster Video. Change was coming. They weren't able to adapt quick enough. They could see it coming. Kodak actually invented, I think, the camera and all those kind of things as well. But the change came so quickly, and the managers were so slow to react that the company went under. So I think there's examples of where we can use the past to help inform decisions for the future. And that can be when change hasn't happened the way it should be, where we've not perhaps upskilled workers effectively, and there's been a gap in capability within any organisation. So no, I agree. You definitely look to the past, but have an eye definitely on what changes are coming and what we can adapt to.
Thank you very much. So we've got Blake back.
Hello,
Blake,
can you hear
say
me?
hello? Do you think we've got audio working?
Thumbs up. Yes.
Yes.
I'm in.
Totally.
Woo! Oh my goodness, it only took an hour, Blake. Brilliant. The joy of technology, everybody. Technology giveth and technology taketh away. That's why I often say that. So let's pause right here. Now we've got Blake with us. Thank you so much for persevering, Blake. I know we've got a bit of an echo in the background there, but we can at least hear Blake. Blake, please.
Okay, so I'm the founder and MD of Optimus Learning Services. We provide managed learning services aimed at helping learning and development add more value to their business, doing that by allowing them the time to focus on strategy and actually govern learning, as opposed to using all of their time on the administration and management of learning. Is that it, or would you like some more? I can go on.
Thank you very much. And in this conversation, no, that's all perfect. And in this conversation where we're talking about the worker of the future and the skills that they need, what are your first headline thoughts about
Okay, I think the first thing for it is the adaptability, and I'm sure this is probably something that the other guys have said as well, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to come in and disrupt the workplace. And that's not just on an actual technology side of things, it's thinking, it's processes. So for me, it's the adaptability, and then it's actually, I suppose, it's having the resilience and the strength behind the ability to adapt. I know we hear a lot about sort of well-being at the minute, and it has sort of become this sort of buzz phrase, but in essence, it's about making sure that everyone's got the ability to change with what's happening. Not just allowing it the statement of, oh, some of these people aren't very good with change to actually ring true. It's about ensuring that everyone can cope with what's happening, be that technology change, be that process change, or be that disruptive change, sort of like the Airbnb type approach. So it's all of those really.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Blake. And Kevin's agreeing with you. He says you describe it well, the ability to change. Jeff Kortenbosch is talking about change management, and then Perry is asking, can you actually manage that? And I know Perry's got some particular opinions on that, and Jeff is laughing and saying you can try. So let's go to our next question. So Christina Gad said, should we be helping people to become more agile so that they can adapt more easily? And Nicola says, absolutely agree with the conceptual descriptors around adaptability, etc. Are there any specific skills which you think would serve people well? So let's go to Ainsley, then Perry, then Blake on this. So specific skills around that adaptability, change.
When you look, just thinking about our own research around adaptability and agility, particularly around adaptability, everyone has an adaptability threshold. So how much more change can you take? Change is the only constant. It's not new. It's happening again, but more quicker. And something that we get people to kind of look at is understanding how much more change can you take. Have you been through on a scale of 1 to 5? How much do you predict there to happen in the coming, weeks, months, and years? And what support do you need from that point, and what is your threshold? So I think taking, a few minutes out to understand where you are and what it looks like around that change piece is going to be key. And that's something that is part of what our researchers told us, where people need to really understand, one, their threshold and how much more they can take. Sounds a bit negative, but to really take time out for that as well.
Thank you, Ainsley. I think that's an interesting thing of, how much more change can you take? It's about, I hate to kind of maybe goad Perry with this one, but that change management in the sense of how can I manage that within myself maybe? Perry, what are your
I think
thoughts
just in
about
response
kind
to
of
what
the
Ainsley said, I
specific
suppose
skills?
we could call it mental agility, and I think there is something about the more you can think into things, and the more you can make learning a part of your natural state and use curiosity and so on. I think you fire your brain differently. I think you feel less fatigued by challenges, and you become more alert to them, and you deal with them at a slightly earlier juncture. So I think we can literally train our brain to become a more fit and agile muscle. But I was going to think about 3 frames for this, because I guess what I really see about agility is that is all about a system. Agility is a sort of system. It's just a more natural and adaptive system. So I think if we can understand the concept of systems thinking a little better, then I think we understand the influences and the factors that are going on around us, and we can understand the impacts they have on us, how we navigate, how we use the flow of those things. It's almost like, change management feng shui. You know what I mean? It's literally sense the energy force and you drive it through. The other thing I'm really fascinated by is how people are starting to talk about anthropology, which is almost like the deeper sense of us in a communal sense and how we interact with each other. So you've got systems, and then you've got us interacting with each other. And I think anthropology's got some fascinating clues to give the learning world about when we're in complex environments, when we're in learning environments, how are we being and how are we with each other? And then I guess linked to that is a little bit more of a serene aspect, which is about deep listening and really sharp questioning. I think we can become more agile when we listen better, when we take some chaos and noise out of the equation, and we deeply think and listen to what we're hearing, what we're sensing, what we're seeing. And that gives us, I think, a better chance to question people about the motives they've got, and we can be agile and respond to that in that sort of sense. So, yeah, so a bit of systems thinking, anthropology, and then some deep listening.
That sounds great, Perry, and I really like that, because some of the big things that I see when people are doing things really well is it is about listening and asking a really good quality question, and you can only ask those really good quality questions if you've listened. So all really good points there. Jeff is saying good points all. Christina in the chat window, a little bit further up in the chat window, made a really great point, saying my degree was in engineering, and I feel it prepared me well to be adaptable, to problem solve, to embrace change, and therefore not sure what aspect of it you can kind of teach. So before we get a little bit more embroiled in this, Blake, what are your thoughts on that question from Nicola about the
Neil's made a great
skills?
point there, which I was going to say actually, it's about filtering the noise. And I think that comes from the challenge with that is there's always going to be noise. There's always going to be different multimedia platforms and noise being sent out in your direction. I think the key is learning what to filter and what not to filter, and that for me comes back to actually the focus. Because if you can start focusing on what it is that, whether as an individual or whether that's a sort of management of your workforce, focusing on actually what you're looking to achieve within a set time period, that then means you can actually sort of get the sort of blinkers on, but in a positive way, so you're then actually ignoring all of the other noise, all of the potential, oh, this is the new silver bullet, shiny penny syndrome, and really sort of push forward with what it is you're actually trying to achieve. So that's I think something that we've all got to get better at, and there's obviously the tools out there, the technology where you can filter emails, and I know that's getting better, but it's then as individuals, and perhaps I'm just speaking from my own personal experience of focusing on what it is you need to focus on right now in the next short few months, perhaps longer period, and then let everything else know that it's still going to be there, and when you need to access it, go back to accessing it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that you're making there, and the chat window are picking up on this as well, about kind of, is it too much noise? Do we need to filter? Do we need to focus? Jeff says filtering noise equals networking skills. So Perry, you've got some points on this. Let's come to Perry, then back to Ainsley and Blake around this idea of our network, of our social skills, and of just filtering out this noise. I think
Jeff's hit on a really important thing there, which is the pace of change. And there'll be a lot of people that deny the fact that change is quicker than it ever is before. But I think if you look at tons of research, it will show you how exponentially quick things are changing. So what would have taken 15 years is now taking like under 3. And so as a result of it, we're in a constant state of unsettled and restlessness about what we need to know to keep on top of that. And the only way you do that is you power up your network, because your network is the thing that will channel its energy and its insight to you, and you channel it back out to them. So I think you form more learning affiliations and learning partnerships because you find people who are tuned into slightly different things to you. That avoids the echo chamber of just going deep in one discipline and gives you a broader sense. So that network thing, I cannot state it enough. That is a critical factor in being successful in the future, is that you know how to deploy your network, and you know what your network, what you can do for your network, kind of thing.
Agreed. No, agreed. I think having a network internally and externally is a key thing, being able to draw on different levels of expertise. But kind of in aside to that, I think filtering out all that noise, you need to understand your own energy supply and your own health and meaning. And part of what we kind of say around the agility piece is the ambiguity threshold, but also the energy supply is a key part. How do you keep renewing it? How do you create meaning? How do you look after yourself? How does this job or this change mean in the bigger scheme of things of what you're doing? So I think yeah, creating a good useful network, filtering out the noise, but I think how to renew yourself on a regular basis, which is perhaps overlooked because we are just individuals after all.
Mm.
Yeah, we can only do so much. I remember years and years ago making, and this is probably not a very popular comment to make, but making a very specific decision not actually to focus too much on politics, because I just felt, well, what can I as one person do? Now my decision kind of 20, 30 years later is much updated on that, and I know citizen of the world and you've got all sorts of things you can do. But there was just a feeling of let me go and do what I can do really well, which is interesting. So Daryl Howes has given us some points in the chat window. We're going to come to Daryl in just a moment because I know he's got some expertise around this area. Blake, first of all, what are your thoughts around this idea of, your network, your filtering, and how that's going to work in the
about
future?
using the network, and Perry mentioned about sort of avoiding the echo chamber of what comes with your network. So he's trying to understand how do you push or extend the boundaries of your network to put yourself in a challenging situation, perhaps, where you are thinking differently to what your people around you. And I think what I like about Ainsley's point about is actually taking as an individual, taking the time to step back. And I think because of how quickly things are changing, how quickly everything's accessible now with all the smartphones, and we're all contactable 24/7. But it doesn't mean we're not sort of primed and tuned to be working in that way. So myself and one of our directors, we were chatting about this the other day. He's from an engineering background. He worked for Ford. So he said on the Mac, we were chatting about taking breaks, and just when you're at your desk sort of all day, even just getting up for 10 minutes or halfway through the morning. You were saying, when you're manufacturing line, you'd shut the plant, you'd have a 15-minute break, everything would stop. And we said, actually, when you're, let's say, in a desk role, that doesn't necessarily happen. So something we've tried to put in place now, where sort of about 10:30, we'll just stand up, might just do some stretches, 10 minutes, talk about anything or nothing and everything in between, just to try and recharge. And it's trying to, I think, get comfortable with realising it's not a marathon where you should be getting tired. You start the day positive, full of energy, and by the end of the day, you're just sort of dragging yourself across the line. I think it's better to actually stop and have a series of sprints. You might do an hour and a half sprint, rest for 20 minutes, read a book, do something non-work related, and especially away from the screen, and then go again. And if you repeat that throughout the day, I know my productivity's increased at that, and I suspect everyone else's would do anyway.
Absolutely, I definitely appreciate that. And I know an ex-boyfriend of mine many years ago, whenever I was a bit stressed or feeling that energy dip, he'd say, go and have a fag. So, what? I don't even smoke. But his point was, when he was a mechanic working on cars, if he couldn't solve something, he'd go and have a fag, which basically is that break, bit of fresh air, think about it, and then go back to the problem kind of with a fresh mindset. So I took the concept, but not necessarily the particular habit.
No, I was just,
Ainsley,
no,
you
that's
look like
me.
you
I
wanted
can't
to
keep still. I'm
jump
one of
in
those
there
guys
at some
that
point, or
like
am I misreading your body language?
get my haunches and I'll pounce in. Don't worry.
I'm definitely with you on that. Okay. In which case then, what I think I'll do, I'll come to Daryl Howes on this, because I know Daryl's got some expertise. So Daryl, if you'd care to unmute, or I can unmute you if you are having problems. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I mean, I think the networking
just kind of everything that we're talking
plays
about
across what a lot of the panel have already said, actually. Ainsley's comments around collaboration definitely for me play to having a good network and using that in order to filter information. I think what Blake has just said about a series of sprints rather than a marathon where you feel absolutely drained at the end of the day. We all know that having a social network, being human in the truest sense, I know research has said that people who join churches, people who join choirs and therefore experience the social aspects of those gatherings generally live longer. And that's probably a target that we all want to have. So yeah, I think the networking thing is very important, plays across a number of those themes. And just to conclude, I think we've got a lot better in recent years in appreciating the difference between exclusive networks, which are very difficult to break into. You need to be part of a particular tribe, and compare and contrast that with inclusive networks, which are very much more open for everyone to join and maybe get some perspectives that they otherwise wouldn't get.
Really great points, Daryl. Well made. Thank you very much. It's lovely stuff there. And Perry, you're saying that Daryl's making a great point
I think
about
when we talk about the turbulence that we've described here and those modern skills, then I think we're starting to see how people that are sort of untethered and don't belong to something, and I don't mean just an organisation or a brand, I mean some principles and some philosophies and something you genuinely believe in, navigate through that change and that turbulence a lot better than people who are untethered. So I think we need to look again inside ourselves and go, who am I and what do I belong to? And that's those social groups that Daryl just talked about. They provide a super cool form of connectivity to something, of insight, of protection, of safety, and those are the things that I think help us challenge difficult times, right? So it doesn't mean you have to belong, like I say, to a brand. It means you belong to something, you stand for something, and that helps power you through. So that's what was going through my mind anyway.
Thank you, Perry. And I think that's something that certainly, I don't know about anybody else, but when I was younger, I was kind of got the concept, but didn't really have something to hold on to. But as I've got so much older, I'm definitely appreciating all of that stuff around the values and so on. So let's go to our next question, and I'm going to ask this one to Blake, then Ainsley, then Perry. So the question is from Nicola. Thank you very much, Nicola Jones. How do we help people make the time to think? I'm thinking about the super commercial environment many of our learners work in. And I think we all have these experiences where people are literally just at it, 9 to 5 or much longer, don't take lunch, always working, hunched at their desk. How do we do that? So Ainsley, first of all, then Blake, then I said Blake first of all. So Blake, first of all, how do we help with that? You said, you've got your own company, and you said, right, this is.
It's a really good question. We help learning and development department, so we probably only help a small minority of the business, and so we can help them to actually do less doing and actually spend that more, have more time to step back and reflect. However, I think the point Nicola's making is really sort of a cultural issue, and not necessarily, it's not an individual company, it's the culture of work. So how we do that, for me, I don't have a definite answer. if I'm honest. I would like to sort of see in the chat how people have, within their organisations have pushed back. I think from a learning viewpoint, it's about, I think what we can do is educate the importance of why people need to step back, the importance of reflection, and the importance of that sort of stop-start and actually taking a break and resting and sort of recharging the batteries. So it's, I think it's that education and informing without sort of being any sort of being any superior. It's just a case of this is what research shows, and this is, you know, you gaining, sharing insights from other people and actually sharing research. And I think what I do with, and I know I do this with our clients, is actually make it personalize it. So if I can share my own story of not necessarily the success but also the war wounds, and actually share, well, what have I been through, what have I learned, then I've found that people do actually take that on board far greater than if I'm just trying to preach at them.
Yeah, absolutely, Blake. And that's what we don't want. The chat window is saying that it's about, you know, leaders leading by example. For instance, Rebecca says, it doesn't help that your CO is emailing you on a Sunday at 2 p.m. Absolutely. Although I was working Saturday myself, so I'm not sure how much I'm leading by example there. Culture plays a big role, says Jeff, and the leadership should lead by example, but rarely do. And somebody else said, I think it was Jeff as well actually, but not just leaders, we ourselves need to set the example. And whilst I joke about working on a Saturday, it's because sometimes I don't work during the week. So, you know, that is leading by example from my point of view, because it's about choice and about what it is that you want to do there. So Virginie has shared about 8 things every person should do before 8 a.m. and about a morning routine and stuff like that. It's a great share there, Virginie, and she shared the link as well. So please do share links, everybody. Really good example. Michael says, I was told I'd never get a bonus or pay rise because I leave on time, which is absolutely horrific. And Nicola said, wow. So that's not very good. So before we move on to the next question, Terry, what are your thoughts on this one about
time's abstract,
how do we help people make that time?
The only thing I can suggest we do, and it sounds a little bit kind of Zen this, is you've got to listen to your energy source, right? Because if you're ploughing away and trying and your energy is going, this is getting harder and harder and harder, then I think stop, because you're likely to produce rubbish things as a result of it. Stop and go and do something that actually gets your neurons firing, whether that's walk around the block, whether it's read something inspiring, whether it's watch a TED talk, I don't care what it is, but stop doing that. Do not pursue that. It's a bit difficult if you're in the middle of heart surgery, but let's just say you're probably prepped for that, so you wouldn't stop. But we're talking about the majority of people's situations where they find themselves perhaps a little bit more in control of their time than they think they are. So I think let's listen to our energy source and realise that we are painting ourselves into a corner unless we do something about it. So there's this rhythm thing, there's this energy source, and if we all want to stand for good work, then we listen to that and we cull our own tendency to just churn any old crap out. So I think have a sense of professional pride and use that as a lever to kind of put a little time out in your systems and your diaries. And all the neuroscience research will tell you that the brain's better when it's been sort of kinetically charged. And so you can do something that is the equivalent of what Blake said. But I think just listen to your energy and manage it.
Absolutely. Neil makes the joke that I'm glad my cardiologist didn't take a break mid-op, as far as I know. But this actually kind of brings into a really nice sort of question from Nicola saying, Perry, could you comment on how that plays in environments which work on a billable hour, which actually is, I think, a similar thing to kind of being in the operations, the operating group.
Who says a day
hours,
or
Perry?
a week or an hour is the right measure of time that you need to bill your client for? So you could take an approach where, you know, a piece of work should take you 3 hours. That doesn't mean you start a clock and finish a clock after 3 consecutive hours. So you can have an hour, then a break, and then come back and do it. So I think what's important to your client is not how many hours you put in, it's what you do in those hours, right? So I think you have a conversation with them which says, I'm going to bill you for 3 hours, but that's not 3 continuous hours. That's me working at my best, getting the absolute right outcome for you. Because if I'm trying to scrutinise a contract and I'm a little bit bleary-eyed and I'm a little bit less than cognitively firing, I am not doing you a service by doing 3 continuous hours. That sounds really glib, but I think if you tell people that, they'll go, that's more artistry than it is mechanical application of work. And if I get a better outcome, go for it.
Yeah, I must say I definitely agree with you, Perry. Certainly, now I'm working in my own business. I do training journal 1 day a week, as many of you know. I get to choose to do those things. But I think it's a really interesting point of how does that work in a larger corporate environment where you could look at that and say, well, okay, get the concept of you working 3 of your best hours rather than 3 continuous hours. But actually, we want all of your hours to be best hours. And if you're not, we'll go
Yeah,
find
and I think it's an
else.
interesting question.
So I think there's an interesting point there. Let's move on to Ainsley. Any thoughts on this to wrap this up, Ainsley, before we move on to our next question?
Values and the culture that drives it. As billable hours, working in a professional services firm, obviously every hour is accounted for. I knew an ex-colleague of mine used to work at PwC, and if he left the office at 6 o'clock, everyone would look at him going, what the hell are you doing? It would be really weird. People would be there till gone 8, 9 o'clock to be present. So people saw that they were working hard. So it depends on what people value and what the organization values. And we need our leaders to be able to provide the environment for that. Organizations are now having workspaces that are conducive to taking time out. Innovation centers, creative hubs, time out pits, sleeping bags in the office, that kind of stuff. But then for organizations that don't have that, sometimes it's about creating it for ourselves, as people have said, creating time out, not even in your lunch, just, taking maybe half an hour out or a day out each month. Again, organizations such as Google have, I'm not sure if this is still the case, but I remember hearing about it where people were given, I think, around 20% of their kind of monthly hours, for instance, was on a project that they were able to do, something that they could dedicate themselves to, be entrepreneurial. So again, one, it depends on the culture, and 2, also how creative you are and how you can create it for yourself as well.
Absolutely, Ainsley, and I think those kind of approaches are really good. And I was talking with somebody, it might have even been Perry actually, on the podcast that we recorded about everybody's going to be, or hopefully, entrepreneurs of the future, maybe inside an organisation. So I thought that was a really interesting point. So let's move on to our last question that we're going to tackle right now before we move into a reflection piece in about 5 or 6 minutes time. So this is from Jeff. Jeff is in the Netherlands, and Jeff asks, how could workers acquire the skills needed in the future? So we've identified what some of them are, we think.
Okay. So
but how are they going to get them? So let's come to Blake first, then Ainsley,
not
then
the
Perry.
actual way of acquiring the skills, but what mindset and approach they have to have. I recently wrote a piece about the individual learner and actually the importance of creating learning plans, because I thought we're talking within L&D, we're talking a lot about moving people on to become self-directed learners, but are we actually educating the individuals on how to be self-directed learners? So for me, there's got to be some level of responsibility, but I think we'll also as a sector, L&D, we need to understand and recognise the customers within the organisation. I think we need to understand, well, who are those people that are self-sufficient, will go out and watch the TED Talk, invest in their own learning, know where they want to go and actually don't need any additional help to get started. And I think then you have the middle group you need to identify, which are those that will need some support. Once they're up and running, they will then develop their confidence and find their own resources and develop their own networks and so on. And then there's the third group, which I suppose it's almost the reluctant learner, and perhaps they're the ones that don't know where to start or lack the confidence to start or don't have the belief in themselves. So, and they're the ones I think, well, L&D probably have to spend more time in that, but perhaps traditionally have seen less results. it's a bit like if you have a sales team, traditionally it's sort of, you focus on the top performers. Actually, my thoughts are actually you challenge that approach and you focus on the bottom performers to try and understand why and what is it they need to actually get going to then become more self-sufficient. So that's my sort of view, is that as an individual, there has to be a shift of responsibility. So where I've said L&D needs to support, but there's also a point where L&D have to step back and just say, we as an industry and as a sort of sector, it's about supporting, it's about guiding, but fundamentally it's not about the doing it for these people. We need to let go of the hands, support when needed, but effectively let people go out there and discover everything for themselves.
Thank you, Blake. And Jeff in the chat window is saying, I know recruitment are starting to look for that continuous development attitude in new employees, which is interesting. Blake, what kind of experience or success have we had?
One of our clients, we work closely with quite a small learning and development team. There was 2 of them for approximately 1,000 people, and they were at that point where the business would channel everything and learning and development and training related through them, and we're continually looking at the 2 L&D people for all of the answers. And what we did with that was actually sort of run some employee engagement forums and found out actually what was the real view within the business of L&D, and it actually came out that they were more of a hindrance. So it wasn't L&D thought that the business were coming to them because they needed their support. The business thought that they were coming to L&D because that was the process. So what we did there was actually said to L&D, well, get yourself out, remove yourself from the process, make yourself more available to talk to managers and consult with the business and be actually seen in the different locations, but let the business actually, in essence, try and source their own training or build their own plans and just guide as they went along. And since they did that like a year and a half ago, we know that's actually helped both sides. So the key thing there is about challenging, for learning and development, challenging the ways of their current working, and also challenging the business, much like that recruitment example, challenging the business's ways of thinking up to this point, but doing so in a steady, subtle, less direct manner, looking for continuous change, as opposed to, well, stop what you're doing, it didn't work. It's like, well, it's good to this point, let's push on from now, make it better.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. It's almost that kind of Kaizen approach of just, small incremental change and having that big effect. That's great. Thank you.
Sure. The acquisition of skills is always it's always one that takes time, especially within a corporate environment. I mentioned that the 3 skill, collaboration, for example. If you want your learners and workers to acquire collaboration skills, you have to, in a sense, look at the underpinning behaviours of what collaboration means within that context, and what also can learning and L&D help to support them via different modalities to help them with that piece. But how they acquire the skills is very much around what works for them in their context. So they could acquire it via face-to-face, via e-learning, via digital, via a whole range of things. But again, it does depend on what the organisation will enable and empower the learner to do. With regards to skills, I remember reading a book, gosh, this is a good while ago, Dr. Prochaska on Changing for Good. I'm sure you guys will have heard around it. It's all around behaviour change and the steps people need to take in order to get there. And it's a tough gig, to change your behaviour in regards to developing skill. And it can take, gosh, I read somewhere that it could take around 18 months to 2 years, or even 10,000 hours to be an expert at a certain thing. So, you know, again, with skill, I would say, gosh, how long? How long is a piece of string? It could take 6, 9 months. It depends on how long the company will allow you to do that. Some companies will just throw a book at you and tell you to read it, and there you go. That's not my preference anyway. There you go. I like that, Joe. I'll use that next time. I'll sound more cleverer.
Incidentally, Ainsley,
Yeah.
the smart answer to how long is a piece of string is twice the length from the middle. Just saying.
Great,
It's
but I
all
hope that
about
helps.
learning something new. Yeah, absolutely. I've learnt you something, so that's good. Thank you. I think you made
Yeah,
some
no
great
problem.
points there about kind of the resources, about the resources we give and the support we give, and they're kind of two.
Cool. So I know Jeff's gone, but I think so. Blake's done a great job on the mindset, and Ainsley on the content and the resources. And so I'm going to talk about physical elements to it. And I think the way we do that is we form much more conscious learning partnerships. There's a company called Next Jump. They're a technology platform provider in the benefits space, and they don't have line managers, but you have a learning partner from the moment you join the company right through your working career. And what that does is it gives you somebody who helps you with all those sticky, nasty, gnarly issues and is personally helping you develop as an individual and as a professional. So I've started to do that much more now. I've started to acquire learning partnerships. So I haven't just got a network of people. I've got some people I'm specifically working on specific things with. They might know a bit more about Agile than me. So we form a learning partnership and we trade and we share. So that's the sort of physical aspect of it. And then there's two elements in it that I think are helping make that happen more. One is that we all develop a much more vigilant instinct. Right? By that I mean we look out in all the right ways. We don't just hear noise. We are tuned to the things that we want to find out about because they're inspiring us, they're interested in us, and so on. And the second one is that then we do something with that by what I can only describe as participative activism. Right, so whether that's another word for experiments or whatever, it's got to involve other people because if it's just left down to you, I think it just drifts into thoughts. But I think if you can get your learning partner or somebody to help you with something you've spotted that you want to try out, you know, you might want to just try out a sort of a Scrum-like project methodology. Find somebody who can help you do that and take your instinct into an experiment and learn from it. So I think that's how I would say we do it. So it kind of builds on mindset and resources that Ainsley and Blake said.
Gosh, some really good stuff shared there, and the book there, Change for Good by James Prochaska, shared by Ainsley as well. Thank you. And Virginie has been sharing lots of really good stuff in the chat window as well, about ambiguity, acquisition of skills takes time, employees have to adapt quickly to change. So if they do not understand for themselves how they would benefit from changing, it cannot work. Hence the point that Blake makes that learners take responsibility for their learning. Virginie, that's a brilliant summary, and I'm going to pause just there. I don't think we can say much better on that for right now. So I'm going to move into a reflection piece and ask what we're actually going to do after today with the discussion that we've made. Now, our speakers are still here, but we are going to go off webcam. So let's just have a little wave goodbye from webcam, but they are staying here for our reflection piece, because I think it's a really interesting point now to think about, well, what am I actually going to do after this? So here comes our slides that we're going to be using, and we're first of all going to practice using our text tool. Have a look on the screen. If you are on a computer rather than a mobile device, you should be able to see on screen a T text tool. What you should be able to do there is on the left of your screen. If you click on that T text tool, click on the screen and then just type your name and click away again, or hello as somebody's put, you should be able to share some text. If you want to get really clever, you can go and change things like the colour if you want to. Of what you're writing. It's on the text tool. Once you've clicked in, you can go in and change that. If you're worried about typing on top of someone else, don't worry at all. What you can do is you can use the move tool, which is the very top tool that you've got on the screen. So go and have a play with that. and just make sure that you can do this. So we're just having a quick practice with the text tool, and then we are going to move on and have a look at what it is that you are going to be taking away from today. So it looks like some of you have got that. If you haven't got it working, no problems at all. You can still use the chat window instead if you prefer. So for now then, let's have a look at what we've got going on this slide. Here's where you can use your text tool to share what is it you are going to do after today. There's been lots of stuff shared about change, about behaviour, about culture, about all sorts of stuff to do with the skills of the future for our learners, but also actually for ourselves as well. So use that text tool. Go and put something on the screen, please, about what are you going to do after today. You can put your name if you want to. You don't have to. What are you going to do from today's discussion? Quite a few things coming up here. Don't worry if you're written over somebody else. We can always move these things around. So let's start at the bottom of this list. Perry says, I'm co-authoring a blog on learning and working energy with Nicola. I love that. And if you'd like it published on Training Journal, we'd love to do that. If not, we understand. That would be fine. Thank you, Perry. I'm really interested in that. Yep. Somebody on the bottom right of the whiteboard has said, personally aim to take more time out. Also, see if any of it can inform our training program, giving workforce skills for the future. What a brilliant takeaway, that idea of more time out. That's an absolutely brilliant one. And then what you can do for the workforce. Thank you for sharing that. So Daryl above that says, I'm going to phone a few people I intended to phone last month and talk about learning points. Also, we have lost our whiteboard. Now, this happened last time, I think we lost the whiteboard, and I never got to the bottom of why that happened. So my apologies. Let me see if I can do a few things. So Daryl, would you mind unmuting for us and just telling us what you were thinking with regards phoning a few people about learning partnerships whilst I go and play and see if I can get this back.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think first of all that was a very interesting point raised by Perry there, and I suppose I'm just giving myself a gentle rap over the knuckles around something that I've probably got on my to-do list, but I haven't, for a variety of reasons, got round to actually doing. So I think I might link those ideas together and make some phone calls. So it's not emailing, not tweeting, not anything like that. Actually pick up the phone, talk directly to people. That's what I plan to do.
Brilliant, thank you. Tell us a bit more, Darren, about the learning partner. Is that just, working on a project together? Is that something a bit more specific?
I think there are some areas of interest that I have where I could probably do with tapping into the expertise that I perceive other people have on those topics and learn from them and develop my thinking as well and find a language. I think that's always important, finding the right language to be able to express yourself and express your thoughts. And I think talking to people can be very useful in that.
Brilliant, thank you for that explanation, Darryl. Really useful action point is to kind of just to motivate you to take that next step of what you've been needing to do anyway. So excellent, thank you. And thank you for sharing. So everybody, yeah, really sorry about that. For some reason, some things are changing on the screen that shouldn't be. My apologies about that. There's obviously some technical gremlins going on today. So we should have your chat window on the screen. Let me just see if I can make a couple of changes here, because there are obviously some things going wrong. There we go. Let's get your action points back there in that chat window and carry on from there. My apologies. And so I think it's really interesting, all the different things that we can take away and to make sure that we're actually doing something, because this, I think, goes back to those points that we need for the skills for the future around things like reflection, and so on. So they're the things that we've been talking about today, about doing things. Oh, some of these technical stuff, I'm so sorry. I'm going to leave things alone and see if we can cope without that. There we go. These are the things that I think that are important for us to make sure that we're doing. Nicola, you've said some great stuff today, great questions, great points, and you say in that action there, take inspiration from connecting with people who are thinking about these issues as I am, and great session. Thank you, Nicola. Really appreciate that. That's lovely of you to say. What are some other things that you're going to be taking away from today? Some other action points. We've had lots of stuff shared about kind of taking time out. We've had stuff shared about culture change and what we can do with those kind of areas. So either in the main chat window or in the action points chat window, what are you thinking about with regards to what you are going to be doing? Neil says, I'll pursue more learning opportunities on subjects I need to update myself on, as I did with Rachel Burnham on virtual reality and learning. Yeah, that's a really good example, Neil. And Neil, feel free to go and share one or two of your blog links or something like that, because that was a really good example of you collaborating with somebody and actually kind of looking into an area that was a bit newer to you. So please do share those links, Neil, so that everybody can go and have a look at those. Okay, Perry says in the chat window, I'm going to find as many people from here on LinkedIn and Twitter as they're all cool, which is absolutely great. And that's part of what we do here, is the networking. So let's just have a little bit of a wrap up. Kevin in the chat window is saying, I love the Learning Buddy idea. I'll try that internally, and if anyone wants the Twitter Learning Buddy, and he shared his Twitter handle there. And Virginie says, take inspiration from successful people and their habits. Absolutely lovely. Let's have a bit of a wrap up from Perry, Blake and Ainsley on just literally your last couple of thoughts on this. Perry, last kind of couple of thoughts before we wrap up.
I think, bearing in mind the theme and the topic was about the future skills and our difficulty in predicting them, I guess what I'd urge people to do is just go and create that sense of future you want. So be active, be participative, join in with other people. Yeah. Don't let it happen to you. Thank you very much. Love that, Blake. Create your own future skills agenda, I guess.
For me, it's about continuing to actually rest to be more productive and accept that works.
Brilliant. Love that, Blake. Thank you. And Ainsley, last point.
Yeah, no, I like Perry and Blake's points, but I think I would say be the change you want to be. You can wait for the organisation, but sometimes it will take a time, but be the change you want to be is the key lesson I'm hearing.
Absolutely. Be the change you want to be. What a great quote to bring up. Well, thank you, everybody. And I do obviously want to say thank you as well to our speakers that we've had today. So thank you very much to Blake, especially with those technical problems you had at the beginning, Blake. Oh, we never thought we were going to get you on, but we're very glad that you're here. Absolutely. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Ainsley, as well. Some great points, and of course thank you to Perry too. We've had some really great points from absolutely everybody here, so thank you for your conversation today. As you know, all of our sessions are available and recorded. They're all going to be online, so if you go to the Training Journal site and look at webinars page, you can go and have a look there and see all of those. You know, we're on Twitter. You can continue the conversation there if you want to, and get to know everybody, go and connect with them. We've also got the Training Journal forum. If you want to post a question and get a little bit more in depth with our Training Journal readers, you can do that there. And our next webinar, well, that is coming up next month. It's all about neuroscience in learning. And we've got Stella Collins is going to be one of our speakers, and a few other people too. We're really looking forward to that conversation. I think it's a really important one that we have in learning and development. So thank you very much. You've all been absolutely fabulous in the chat room, as well as our speakers. We couldn't do this without you in the chat room and on Twitter. So thank you very much, and we will see you soon.